talked about the last number of weeks, it's important during these weeks to prepare our hearts to receive Christ rather than just celebrate Christmas and all of the busyness, which many people do, and sometimes it just kind of distracts them what the center of Christmas is about, which is Jesus, of course, being the reason for this whole season. The focus of Advent is to prepare us to receive Christ rather than just get distracted with so many other things. Now, our gospel for today is from Luke chapter 3, which tells us about John the Baptist. John the Baptist was one who prepared people to prepare the way of the Lord. He was out in the wilderness, kind of a crazy man with eating locusts and wild honey and a coat of camel hair, saying, prepare the way of the Lord, make his path straight. John the Baptist tried to help people prepare by turning from their sins and turning toward God. He said he's not even worthy to tie the shoelaces of the sandals that Jesus was preparing. Now, Luke chapter 3 is our gospel for today. The context of our gospel is right after our gospel for today. Jesus comes to John the Baptist for his own baptism. And when Jesus came to him, John the Baptist vehemently objected, saying, I am not worthy. But Jesus says, no, I need to be baptized you. And so John the Baptist submitted to the will of Jesus and baptized him. And as he did, the clouds were opened. A dove came down in bodily form and lighted on Jesus. A voice from heaven said, you are my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Now, that happens at the beginning in chapter 4. Our gospel for today, John the Baptist was preparing people for Jesus coming in chapter 3. Several chapters later, what's interesting, about a third of the way through the Gospel of Luke, John the Baptist is in prison. John the Baptist is there. We don't know exactly why, except we do know that the wicked, evil King Herod had him put in prison. And what's interesting that happens is that even though John the Baptist was preparing the way for Jesus, even though John the Baptist baptized Jesus and presumably believed in him, a third of the way through the Gospel of Luke, John the Baptist is sitting in prison, and he sends several of his disciples to Jesus to say, are you the one who is to come, or shall we look for another? Are you the one who is to come, or shall we look for another? After all that took place, preparing for Jesus, baptizing him, seeing the dove come down, he still asks, are you the one to come, or shall we look for another? Interesting, because sitting there in prison, John the Baptist wanted to believe. He had spent his whole life preparing for Jesus coming. Jesus was here doing his mighty deeds, and John the Baptist was still kind of having his wonders and doubts. He wanted his disciples to go to Jesus to say, are you the one to come, or shall we look for another? In a sense, John the Baptist is saying, I believe, but help me in my unbelief. Help me, prove it to me that you are the Messiah. Now, on the one hand, the question, third of the way through the Gospel of Luke, the question from John the Baptist, are you the one to come, or shall we look for another, is a terrible question. He, of all people, should have known that Jesus is the one to come and that he didn't need to look for another. He, of all people, should have known that Jesus is the one for whom he had been preparing the way. He met Jesus face to face. He baptized him. He should believe in him. So on the one hand, it's a terrible question. But on the other hand, it's a good question. It shows that John the Baptist, even with all that evidence, was still struggling, wondering, searching for the answer whether Jesus was in fact the one that he believed that he was. In reading through the commentary on this text, I ran across a sentence which read, it's no longer the one stricken by doubt who stumbles, but the one who is no longer stricken by the question of Jesus. It's not so much one who is stricken by doubts who stumbles, but the one who is no longer stricken by the question of Jesus. John the Baptist was stricken by the question of Jesus. He wanted to know more. He struggled, questioned, wondered, searched, pondered the question of Jesus, and could not rid himself of the question of who Jesus was. Are you the one to come, or shall we look for another? As we enter into our third week of Advent preparation, I'd like to ask you, are you stricken with the question of Jesus? Are there ponderings about Jesus that sometimes eke into the back of your mind and you really want an answer? Do you sometimes kind of really wonder at Christmas about the real meaning of Jesus? Are you stricken with the question of Jesus? Does he engage you to the core of your being so much so that you want to know more and experience more about who he really is? You know, I think it's great to be confident in our faith. There's something very positive to be secure and strong in our faith, that nothing would have us question anything about God. There's really something very, very good about that. I think it's also important to question, to think, to wonder, to ponder about what faith in God really means. I think it's important to be stricken by the question of Jesus, so that questioning, pondering, searching helps us move through the process by which we finally reach understanding and a deeper commitment. I think it's important to be engaged with the life of Jesus more and more, so that we never quit wondering, searching, pondering, and discovering. That's why I'm not always convinced when people say, when you're wondering or questioning something, that you just need to accept it by faith. Sometimes I'm in a Bible study with kids who are adults, and we get to some of the great complexities and mysteries of the faith, and it gets really difficult, like when we're talking about Jonah and the whale, or Adam and Eve, or Jesus and the resurrection, or heaven and hell, and it gets to the point where someone just says, well, you'll just have to accept it by faith. You know, I wonder if that kind of denigrates wondering, pondering, questioning, searching. It's kind of going into the mode of saying, quit wondering, quit questioning, just accept it by faith. I mean, that didn't work for me when I was 16, you know, in confirmation. Just accept it by faith. And it doesn't quite work for me still today. Because if faith only consists of just accepting what we can't know, then for me, it falls into the category of things that I'd like to believe to be true, but I'm not really sure whether they're true or not. I mean, I'd really like to believe that Bigfoot is true. I just like the idea of Bigfoot. In fact, Drew last night, Sam got him a little Bigfoot whistle from the dollar store, and as we were caroling with 10, 12 of us last night, he was walking around the neighborhood blowing his Bigfoot whistle. I was hoping that Bigfoot would come out and join us in the caroling, you know, or the Loch Ness Monster. Wouldn't that be cool? Or the Abominables. I mean, I believe they're true. I just think it would be very cool if they're true. But I don't want to put Jesus in the same category as Bigfoot, the Abominable Snowman, or the Loch Ness Monster. When someone says, you just have to accept it by faith, I just kind of think, you know, let's accept something by faith when we've explored the arguments, when we've passionately searched, when we've prayed, when we've pondered, when we've engaged our heart, soul, mind, and strength by being stricken by the question of Jesus. And after that kind of search, then yes, accept it by faith. Hebrews 11 says faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. We need to be stricken by the question of Jesus and engage him with every sense that we have, because it's not the one stricken by doubts who stumbles, but the one who is no longer stricken by the question of Jesus. Because the opposite of faith is not doubt, the opposite of faith is not unfaith, the opposite of faith is apathy. The opposite of faith is just not caring. That's the hardest when I meet the people, you know, if they don't believe, at least you can engage them a little bit and say, I don't care. The opposite of faith is indifference. The opposite of faith is being lukewarm. Those are the ones, remember when we talked about the Church of Philadelphia in June? Those lukewarm people, Jesus will just spew them out of his mouth. The indifferent, the apathetic, the ones who just don't care, who are no longer stricken with the question of Jesus. So, back to John the Baptist in prison. When, third of the way through the Gospel of Luke, when John the Baptist sends his disciples to ask, "Are you the one to come, or shall we look for another?" Jesus says, "Go tell John what you hear and see. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised up." Jesus says, go look at the evidence. Are you the one to come, or shall we look for another? Jesus says, go look at the evidence. Go look at the difference that it makes. He didn't say just accept it by faith. He says, go look at the evidence. See what God is doing. Are you the one to come, or shall we look for another? Go look and see what God is doing, and you'll see that Jesus is the Messiah. He is the one who is to come. So on this third Sunday in Advent, as you prepare to receive Christ during this holy time, rather than just celebrate Christmas, think of to yourself that you are the best evidence, that you are the best witness that people are going to see to prove that God has come into the world. You might be in these 10 days before Christmas the only witness, the only evidence that some people are going to see about what God is doing in the world. Right now, in these days before Christmas, there's people around you in your homes and schools and neighborhoods who aren't Christians, who know that Christmas is coming, and they might even come to church simply because they see evidence in your life that Jesus is alive and active in the world. There's many people down deep who are wondering, is this Jesus stuff for real? Is Jesus really who he said he is, or shall we look for another? Is Jesus really God's son? Is he the one who God sent? They're asking the same question that John the Baptist asked. Are you the one to come, or shall we look for another? They're asking the question of John the Baptist, and they're looking for evidence. They're looking to see hearts and lives that are changed. They're looking at people who believe like you, and they're looking to see how your faith changes your life because you believe that God came in the world to do just that. They're looking for evidence, and they're looking to you. And so in these 10 days before Christmas, be stricken with the question of Jesus and let it show in your life. Make your life a witness that Jesus is the one to come and that we don't need to look for another. I don't think I need to suggest ways you can do that. You know more ways than I can even suggest how to do that. But I want to encourage you to be stricken by the question of Jesus and let it show in your life. By doing that, your Advent preparation will be filled with the presence of God, and you will be blessed in your witness. Let's pray for that. Let's pray. Gracious God, loving Jesus, child